You're a German soldier in the Great War, and your name is Hans. Your battalion approaches the enemy trenches after attacking them with gas. You remember being told about the dark practices of the Russians. You carefully step into the first line as your comrade speaks. Hans, you said almost no one survives the gas, right? Almost no one. Wait, dozens of men with bloodied faces stand up. They are the undead. The stories are true. You do what any rational person will do in your place. You quickly move in the opposite direction. Hey ups, Germans! This is the attack of the dead men. The Eastern Front of the Great War saw intense offensives and encounters. The Russians, led by Tsar Nicholas II, were facing the German Empire on the north and the Austro-Hungarian one on the south. The one that gets the spotlight today, however, is the Battle of Osowiec, a fortress in the edge of the Russian Empire, just outside of East Prussia, in modern-day Poland. Since a significant railway went through it and the fort was strengthening the Russian defenses in the area, Germany will have to defeat the troops in there if they wanted to advance into Poland from East Prussia. It was built in the 1880s and 90s, and it had already been attacked by Germans in September of 1914, just a few weeks after the beginning of the war. After bombarding it for 6 days, a force of 12,000 assaulted 8,000, but was defeated, losing 1,600 men against 139. But they did damage the building quite a bit. The second invasion started in February of 1915 with several days of firing from heavy cannons with a 420mm caliber, and also bombardment from plane bombers, the use of which was quite new at this point. They successfully managed to damage the fortress even more, but were repelled in the man-to-man front. And then, the soon-to-be the strangest engagement of the Great War took place in summer of 1915. The German forces under the command of von Mackensen had been progressing into Russian territories with the Golitsa offensive, south from Osowiec. So when the 11th Landwehr Division was ordered to take Osowiec once and for all, their morale and resolve were rather high. This would be a larger invasion, and the leader of the attack, Field Marshal Paul von Hindenburg, brought 15 battalions, over 7,000 strong, with almost 30 siege guns, against a defending force of 900 soldiers of the Semliansky Infantry Regiment, 400 of which were local militias, including the 13th Company, under the command of the Russian Lieutenant Vladimir Karpovich Karlinsky, who built new trenches together with his men, since the heavily damaged fort wouldn't be enough protection against artillery. Thing is, Hindenburg had brought another weapon to this battlefield. 30 batteries of artillery, equipped with poison gases. Gas was already used in 1914 as tear gas, which wasn't very effective, and poison gas was introduced in April of 1915, chlorine gas, in the Battle of Ypres, taking the lives of 1,100 allies on its first use. Knowing that the gas was already used in the Golitsa offensive and that it had been effective, the 11th Landwehr knew that the defenders would have very few gas masks that weren't effective against chlorine. Although they had increased the artillery attacks, they waited until the wind was favorable, allowing the gas to travel properly. They released it at 4 AM of the 6th of August of 1915. Eventually, both a greenish mist of gas and an artillery barrage reached the defenders simultaneously. Upon finding out about the attack, a fair amount of them tried covering their faces with bandages and worn-out clothes, some of them soaked in urine, to counteract the gas, but it wasn't very effective. All while the firing of artillery shells continued, many of which contained choking gas. The effects of this chlorine gas, which was already mixed with bromine, were brutal. Once it reacted with the air humidity, it will become hydrochloric acid, capable of killing and making the grass and leaves yellow or black, and even affecting cannons and metal, leaving a green oxide surface. It burns the eyes, nose, and mouth in a toxic manner. Once inhaled, it will painfully damage the respiratory system, burning the lungs, and I could keep going, but you probably don't want me to. But yes, one of the most incomprehensibly painful and horrifying experiences a human being can face. About 7,000 members of the 11th Division advanced towards the defenses, who were clearly already afraid of the men of Osowiec. They carefully entered the enemy ground after cutting the barbed wire, encountering an odd silence. They expected to have most of the enemies taken down by the gas, and for the few survivors to offer little resistance. The former was correct. The latter, well, you will see. Russian artillery landed and machine gun fire reached them. A few reinforcements were arriving from the rear. The defenders of Osowiec stood up, with Katlinski at the front, who shouted, "Charge!" Bloody tears, their faces burnt and stained by blood, covered by worn-out clothes, coughing out red lungs. The appearance of the seemingly undead men charging was a nightmare in real life for the 11th Division, a sight of their own creation. 100 men of the 13th Company, who had suffered an incredible agony, counterattacked in rage, too angry to die, while many of the Germans turned away and ran. Many of the undead moved erratically, alike to the walking dead, but the others sprinted and rapidly approached their foes. The fleeing enemies stumbled upon each other, getting trapped in barbed wires and holes. Soon, most of the invaders were in panic, but a few hundred did not, but rather kept key positions, still planning to take Osowiec that day. They had to. The defenders, still in pain, were ordered to kick a battalion out of the Sosnieskaya positions. As they prepared to counterattack, they saw the bodies of their brothers and the locals, and got furtherly filled with rage. They charged towards the enemy positions as they opened fire in response. Katlinski regained territory at the edge of his men's bayonets. His age was actually just 21 years old, but reality is unforgiving, and Lieutenant Katlinski was mortally wounded by a bullet. Still amongst the chaos of battle, he led the command of the company to the Polish combat engineer Władysław Streminski, who was also severely poisoned. Upon embracing his role, Streminski unsheathed his saber and shouted, "Hurrah!" joining his comrades in engaging the invaders in close combat in a mindlessly brutal counterattack. Some attacked with their bayonets and others slashed with their swords, taking out a significant amount of the enemies. And so, at 11 AM, just a few hours after the gas attack, the German Empire was driven out of Osowiec by dead men. Despite his impressive resilience, Katlinski passed away from his wounds that night and earned the Cross of St. Georgi post-mortem. A fair amount of information from the battle was lost, and the casualties of any of the sides are unknown. The German records were never shown, maybe since they would have been very negative. But what we do know is that an overwhelmingly outnumbered force defeated the Germans in an impressive battle, and that those men endured one of the most painful things in the world. The newspapers from both nations soon told the skirmish, naming it the Attack of the Dead Men. The creepy fame of the occurrence would have conveniently driven attention away from the German disaster. The German prisoners confessed that they were certain that Osowiec would be taken that morning, and had already assigned squadrons for burying the enemy casualties after their victory. Since the German Imperial forces gained further ground in the south, and the fortress was less useful than before, the men of Osowiec were ordered to demolish the place and retreat back with the rest of the Russian army. Stravinsky would also receive a Cross of St. Georgi and become a painter after the war, a successful one that is, developer of the theory of unison and his very own theory of vision. Russia will have its revolutions just 2 years later, and when it eventually became the Soviet Union, the Battle of Osowiec was perceived as a victory of a right-wing state, and was repressed from history books, forgotten. But after the fall of such union, the occurrence was rediscovered, and many history lovers have done projects to give the defenders of Osowiec the fame they deserve, such as the 2018 short film Osowiec, Attack of the Dead Men by director Vasily Chiginsky, and the Swedish another band has made a song about the battle, the heavy metal Russian band Aria. The song is simply called Attack of the Dead, and Sabato's song is The Attack of the Dead Men. But 2 weeks before releasing it in English, they allowed their Russian buddy, Radio Tapok, to release an excellent Russian cover of the song, whom they invited to a concert in Moscow, to which he showed up in full imperial Russian uniform, ready to sing his Russian lyrics along with the English ones. And that's it. Now you know that pain really is just in the brain. Ciao!